Hello, everyone, and good afternoon, and welcome to another study with the biblical perspective. As you know, for this season, for these few weeks, we are looking at: is the Bible in favor of politics? Is it for or against it? And as we had a discussion last week, we spoke about what does politics really mean, and we looked at the word politica, and from it came policies, and from that from there we looked at, actually we went to Cain, went straight to Genesis, as we always should, because everything is in the beginnings of the beginnings. And we looked at Cain, and he built a city, and within that city he had policies, which is another word for politics, where he had a government. And then we looked at Moses and how he tried to be the sole political entity, in that he was actually mediating between the children of Israel and the mixed multitude. And I think probably that's where much of his problems came. But he was looking at that on his own, and looking at it not holistically, and not that he could actually have others engage with him in mediating between the people and their problems. And his father-in-law Jethro came, and he was not even an Israelite, and God used a non-Israelite to tell an Israelite, aka Moses, that he needed help in governing the people. And Moses, as wise as he was, went to God, took the advice, and he appointed people over, I think it was thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. So he himself knew it was a big challenge for him, and he took the advice, and it fared well. And we looked at Bible text as well, which some of them may come out again today. So that was just a quick recap of what happened last week. And this week, the title is "Should Christians Run for Office?" Because there's a lot of issues. Should Christians even vote? Should Christians be in politics? And if they are in politics, it means that they may have got there somehow. So this week's study is: should Christians run for office? So before we go into it, I will pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for being the God of who you are. Lord, we also looked at your government in heaven, and that's where these politics or policies really started. And man has just taken the blueprint from heaven and brought it on earth. But how we do it should be how you do it. But we're going to look at how we govern our lives today through policies, politics, and through governing of ourselves, amongst ourselves, but importantly, those who are governing over us. And Lord, I pray that you let your Holy Spirit speak through myself and through Pedro, and let the viewers hear something that they may have not heard before from your word. Because really, Lord, it's all about the biblical perspective. So as we go through the study, I pray that you will cover Simon and Colleen, and hopefully she will be here. And thank you for all that you've done for the biblical perspective. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. So, Pedro, I just gave a quick synopsis of last week. Have you got anything to add to that?
No, it's all right.
Okay, well, that's good. So, we have a series of questions, as we always do. I think it's good to ask questions because questions generate thoughts on things that we may have already known. And we say, haha, I'm glad Pedro mentioned that, because now I've got my tension released. Or we may have a tension that we may need to release, and hopefully these questions will actually generate a releasing of that, and we can be in line not only with ourselves and with our literature, but also with the Bible, to know that the foundation of everything is from the word. So the title, as I said before, is: a Bible in favor or against politics? And Pedro, my first question is: does the Bible encourage or discourage Christians to run for office in governments? And before you answer that, we know that there are Christians running for office, but I want the biblical perspective on this.
Okay, thank you for this question, and greetings to everyone who is with us as we go through this uh, this discussion. So, although the Bible does not have any particular or specific word on you shall run or you shall not run for office, we do have, I believe,
Yeah.
principles in there that could help us answer the question you asked. Last time we saw that the word politics did not occur in the Bible, but the practice of it actually permeated the whole of the biblical story. And parallel to this is the question you ask now. So it is rather, is there in the Bible um, the practice of running for office? And if we ask the question like this, then the answer will be absolutely yes. The Bible
Okay.
is actually full of examples where people run for office. Now, what is left for us to determine is whether this is a good thing, whether the Bible speaks of it favorably or speaks against it. So, the best example amongst all the examples and the stories we could find, in my opinion, is found in 2 Samuel chapter 15 and verses 1 to 6. If you want to read that for me, please.
Okay. After this, Absalom bought a chariot and horses, and he hired 50 bodyguards to run ahead of him. He got up early every morning and went out to the gate of the city. When people brought a case to the king for judgment, Absalom would ask where in Israel they were from, and they would tell him their tribe. Then Absalom would say, "You've really got a strong case here. It's too bad the king doesn't have any more any sorry, I can't see that anyone to hear. I wish I were the judge. Then everyone could bring their cases to me for judgment, and I would give them justice." When the people tried to bow before him, Absalom wouldn't let them. Instead, he took them by the hand and kissed them. Absalom did this with everyone who came to the king for judgment. And so he stole the hearts of all the people of Israel. Then
So
Absalom, yeah,
sorry, are you saying
yeah,
something?
go on. Yeah, I finished. I finished, yes.
Yeah. So thank you. So when you read a story like this one, you certainly, I'm speaking from today's perspective, you can
Yes.
certainly ask yourself the question with quite a good guess as to what the answer will be. Is there any politics going on there as we understand politics? And
Yeah.
if you're not sure how to go about answering the question, this is what you need to ask yourself. Where did he stand? This Absalom, where did he stand?
At the gate
Well, the text says he stood at the gate of the
of the
police.
city. Okay, the
He
city.
stood at the gate of the police. Now, why did he stand at the gate of the police? He stood at the gate of the police so that he could catch the people who were coming
Mm-hmm.
to discuss the affairs of the police, the affairs of living together in that community. There we go. This is politica, because
Okay.
politica is to discuss the affairs of the police. But you could go further because your question is about, or our common question is about the practice of running for office. Now,
Yeah.
the text says when people would come to him, he would say, okay, you've got a strong
Yeah.
case here. It's too bad that there is nobody to listen to you. But
Yes, he did.
but the king is the one who does this. And these people were going to the king. So the question now is, was he trying to compete with the king? And the obvious answer is yes. He is
Yes.
Mm.
trying to compete with the king. So if the king is already in charge and he intercepts the people at the gate of the police, the city, and
Yeah.
he tells them that if he were in charge, then everything would be fine and he would give them good judgment.
Yeah, he did.
Is he somehow running for office?
Of
Yes.
Is he
course.
trying to get on the throne?
Yes, he is.
Well, the text ends by saying he was stealing the hearts of the people.
Mm.
Doesn't that look like running for
Yes. Yes, it
office?
does.
Yes.
So
Yes, it does enter.
we can see that although there isn't any particular reference to running in terms of you can run or you cannot run, the practice of
Mm.
it is right there in that story, which is found in the Bible. And I told you, if we were to look into it elsewhere, we will find it in great number. The practice of running for office.
Okay. And I don't suppose he was the only one. He was the only one trying to do that, because sometimes people would try and run for office, and it wasn't their place to run for office because it wasn't under the will of God. So,
Mm.
Pedro, in what way is this story actually relevant to the question of today's Christians' context of running for government office?
That story is relevant in many ways. And again, although we are not in the same social political context um, as back in those days, and
Mm.
probably we have a different MO, we have a different modus operandi in terms of how we deal with politics. There is an element, a particular element that is common to both context, his or this story in the Bible, and what we are experiencing right now. And that's the context of campaigning.
Mm.
Mm. Yes.
That's the
Yes.
element, rather. That's the element of campaigning.
Mm.
And that's why, you see, when you campaign, what are you trying to do?
Win
You're trying
favor
to
for
win.
yourself. Yeah,
Yeah.
go on, Colleen.
Yeah, you're trying to win an office, aren't you? You're trying to, if we think about it in the modern day context, you're trying to be the leading power of a government or of an establishment.
And the practice of it, how does it go down when you campaign?
Well, if you're obviously
What
if you're
what
a
what do you
successful,
do?
well, if you are a successful campaigner, you'll win. But during your
No, but
campaign,
before you win, what do you do when you
yes,
campaign?
well, during your campaign, especially looking at it from a modern day context, you kind of like, as Absalom did, you try to win the hearts of people. So you tell them all the things that you're going to bring and all the things you're going to do for them and how you're going to make everything right. As soon as you're elected, you're going to transform everything. So, everything is brilliant. So all you have to do is vote for that person. And then all these promises that they made during their, election campaign will come to will come true. And as someone watching that campaign, you're looking out to see how each campaigner is going to benefit you. How is it going to benefit your pocket? How is it going to benefit your economy? And that's typically why individuals choose a particular party or a particular individual.
And I suppose also the two can work hand in hand. You've got to be personable, right? You've got to look good. You've got to speak wonderfully. Like Obama, the women loved Obama, not for his policies, but some of them for the way he looked. I remember one lady was saying, a lady that I would never have thought would have gone for a man like Obama, given her ethnicity. And she said, "Isn't he just gorgeous? Forget the policies." And she wasn't even an American, right? So I think the two go hand in hand. If you're personable, like Absalom, with his little tricky self, he knew by not letting them bow down to him, I'm going to go one better. I'm going to embrace them. I'm going to let them. I'm going to kiss their hand to show that I'm really for the people. And some of them use that charismatic strategy, and then they will see, as you've said, Colleen, see the need of the people in society, and then they'll go, "Oh, I'm going to try and work with that and that and that and that," with no chance of fulfilling everything, even with their cabinet and whatever. So I think the two
Okay.
have to work hand in hand. Yes, Pedro.
Thank you for that. You're right. And what we are seeing here is nothing new under the sun. You can
No.
clearly see that there is a campaign going on here, and explicitly the text says the aim was to steal the heart of the people, which is exactly what campaigners today in the political sphere do. When we want to um, when we run for office, we want the people to feel that we are the closest to them. We want people to feel that we will, as you rightly said, both of you, make a difference in their lives. So, I could you read for me from the same chapter, 2 Samuel chapter 15? Read verses
Yeah.
3, 4, and 6 for me, please.
Okay. Absalom would then say to him, "Look, your claims are legitimate and appropriate, but there is no representative of the king who will listen to you." Absalom and everyone who had a judicial complaint could come to me, and I would make sure he receives a just settlement. And six, Absalom acted this way towards everyone in Israel who came to the king for justice. In this way, Absalom won the loyalty of the citizens of Israel.
You see that? Is
Mm.
there
Yes.
any difference between what happened, what we're talking about in the Bible? This is 3,000 years old, right?
Mm.
This happened 3,000 years ago. But I guess we have absolutely no challenge in connecting and reconciling the picture that we have in our minds of what Absalom did when we read this text, and all these pictures that we see day in and day out, particularly at the moment around us in the big modern 21st century governments of the world.
Yeah.
There is no difference. He said to them, "You have a strong case." He said to them, "If I were in charge, everything would be fine." And eventually, they went to the polls, and whose name was on the ballot? The ballots. Whose
Absalom.
name was there? Well,
Absalom.
can you read for me verses, same chapter, verses 9 to 13, please?
Okay. And the king said unto him, "Go in peace." So he arose and went to Hebron. But Absalom sent spies throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, "As soon as ye hear the sound of the trumpet, then ye shall say, Absalom reigneth in Hebron." And when Absalom went out, sorry, and with Absalom went 200 men out of Jerusalem that were called, and they went in their simplicity, and they knew not anything. And Absalom sent for Ahithophel the Gilonite and David's counselor from his city, even from Giloy, where he offered sacrifices, and the conspiracy was strong, for the people increased continually with Absalom. And there came a messenger to David, saying, the hearts of the men of Israel are after Absalom.
All right. You read from a different version.
I
It's still
did.
the same.
I read.
It's still the same. But I wanted the words of the particular version we have in on the screen. Um,
Ah,
but that's okay. We can see it for ourselves. Um, if you
okay.
go back to the verse where it says he had all these 200 men gathering around them. Yeah, that's verse 11. He took 200 men from Jerusalem with him as guests, but they knew nothing of his intentions.
Mm,
Do you realize? I think the version you read said they knew nothing. But this
that's
one is
right.
quite clear and more to the point of the the parallels that exist between what happened 3000 years ago and what is unfolding right in front of us and all around us in all these places where we reside, because we can be around this YouTube channel, but we live in different
Mm,
parts of the world. But it doesn't matter. This text speaks to all of us because that's what we see around us. So he had
yeah,
this organized campaign, and there were insiders and outsiders, and there were manipulations going on. He had all these people around them, but he didn't tell them exactly what he was doing. They thought they were
that's
just
right.
participating in something grand. That reminds you of what is going on in one of the biggest democracies of the world, where you
Yeah,
have powerful people doing all kinds of things and lots of people following them, not realizing fully what they are up to and what they're doing. I hope this rings
yeah.
a bell. So you can see that running for office 3,000 years ago is exactly the same as running today. And then there is a report that came. You can give me the text again, please. Verses 13, 12 and 13, where they say in verse 13 particularly, a messenger soon arrived in Jerusalem to tell David, all Israel has joined
Mm,
Absalom in a conspiracy against you.
mm,
Do we see it?
yes,
Do we understand it? This is how running for office looks like. This is what running for office looks like in this particular story. And it,
mm,
it is quite it is quite the same as what is happening in the political sphere of today
mm,
around, isn't it?
yeah.
Now,
Absolutely. Yeah, go on, sorry.
no, go ahead.
No, no, and I'm saying, right, that seems to be the MO, as you said, the modus operandi, that when you want to take over someone's position and it's not really for you to have, you will go to these lengths to take it, but there's always someone that will bring a message that someone's conspiring against you to give you opportunity, either defend yourself or to step down if that opponent is too strong for you. And there's a question in the comment that says, and it says here, we are to promote God and what He can do for them. So choose God. That should be our politics. And another comment from Esther D. Campaigning, share your agenda mandate that falls in line with what the people feel they need to make their life better for them. So even the opponent can actually see that what the people need, but it doesn't mean that he's going to give it to them, because if you're already sneaky in getting that position, in having a coup against the government, that means that your word is not sure and it's not true. So it's an interesting one. Interesting
So,
one.
so don't forget that we're dealing with the question as to whether Christians, biblically
That's
speaking,
right.
would be supported in running or not running for government
Yeah.
office.
Yeah.
That's what we're looking at. And we've seen when people run for office, it means somebody else is there. And
Mm-hmm.
what do they do when they run for office, generally speaking? And we've looked at that particular story. I know there is a lot more we can say about this, and somebody may come up and say, well, he chose to do this, but surely you can run for office and not be involved in all these things. Well,
Yeah.
well,
Pedro, also, just to add to that, we're primarily talking about like holding the highest office in government. So what we've just discussed seems as though it reflects like as if an individual was running to be prime minister, for example. But there are loads of like MPs, whether they're Conservative, Labour, Liberal, Democrat, thinking about the UK political system, who don't who are not the prime minister, but just hold an office within their local constituents, which is something which could be argued that this is something different.
Well, I'm glad you're talking about this. But what we're looking at, and this is what we said at the beginning, we said that there are principles that will
Mm-hmm.
answer, that will help us answer the particular question as to whether, as Christians, the Bible encourages or discourages running for, for office in a political sphere. So we are going through the different stories and we're looking at what it takes to actually run. So that can be applied to any kind of
Okay.
office, whether it would be for
Yes.
presidential position um, or any other position. What does it take, or how does it happen
Mm-hmm.
when you run? When
Mm-hmm.
you run, you campaign. When you campaign, what do you do? When you campaign, what do you say? When you campaign, what's the position of the person against whom you're running? Are you with me? So we just saw one example of a campaign being run by Absalom 3,000 years ago. And we compare that to what we generally see today, 3,000 years later, and we see the exact same maneuvering going on. Now, let's look at another story to see what happens there. Let's look at Judges chapter 9, verses 3 to 5.
Colleen, you got that?
Yeah, Judges 9, 3, 3 to 5, and it read, his mother's relatives spoke on his behalf to all the leaders of Shechem and reported his proposal. The leaders were drawn to Abimelech, and they said, he is our chosen relative. They pulled him, they paid him 70 silver shekels out of the temple of Baal Berth. Abimelech then used the silver to hire some lawless, dangerous men as his followers. He went to his father's home in Ophrah and murdered his half brothers, the 70 legitimate sons of Jerubbaal, and on one stone. Only Jotham Jerubbaal, youngest son, escaped because he hid.
All right. Here we have another example of somebody campaigning to hold the top position in a race in or within the context of the Bible, within the biblical context. And what do we see again? We see the same sort of mentality that we saw with Absalom. The same one. In fact, this story that we have right now precedes the Absalom story. Yeah? So we see there is a consistency about running for office in the Bible. Now, it is good pointing, or it would be important to point at the fact that in the Bible, really, there isn't a, a practice from God's perspective of actually running for office. The type of society that um, God wanted to establish within his people excluded that modus operandi.
Mm.
It was rather God choosing people for office. But we can see in the Bible that even though God did not establish that principle of you want to be whoever you want to be, you want to hold office wherever you want to hold office, therefore you're going to run for it. Although he did not establish that model, although it doesn't come from him, the Bible is full of it.
Yeah.
But what we see consistently is when people engage in that sort of behavior, then it seems quite natural that they will do things that are actually against the will of God because what they are after is power for
Yes.
themselves. And
Mm.
just that is problematic. Again, what
Mm.
we see is as they run for office, they manipulate
Mm.
people. As they run
Yeah.
for office, they create chaos. As they run
Mm.
for office, they abuse their, their power. As they run for office, they do things that they're not supposed to do. And in the case of this guy here, he kills his 70
Yeah.
brothers. He
Mm.
eliminates in the most brutal way.
Mm.
Yes.
And his mother is involved in the campaign. So the
Yeah.
challenge here really is we're not saying now
Mm.
we are in a different world.
Yeah.
We are
Yeah.
in a different era. And
Yeah.
it could well be that you don't need to practice these things anymore. But the challenge still remains. I believe it was the same then and it's the same today. What is at the heart of your proposal as you run for office? Do people really know what your motives are?
Mm.
What is behind your manifesto? What mindset are you promoting? What is it that you want to achieve really? These are the real questions you need to ask yourself if
Mm.
you were to run for office. And let me have you read something. If you can read for me, Matthew 6, verse 24. If you can align yourself with that, then let's see.
No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money.
It is interesting that the word here is to serve. You know the word
Yeah.
minister. When you a minister,
Mm-hmm.
minister is means servant, right? In the
Mm-hmm.
original language, being a minister is being a servant, is to serve. Now, the moment you have money involved in the service, something particular happens. Do you think you would have had all these people running for office if they were not paid quite a good amount of money?
No, Pedro,
Would you run?
Pedro.
That's interesting, Pedro. There's a comment here relating to
Yes,
that. I don't know if I
I
could.
was going to read. I was going to read.
I don't know
Carry
if
on, Cully.
I can quickly read that.
If I put
It
polite touch.
says, yeah.
Yeah.
Let me see which one it is.
Okay, while you're
I've
looking
got it.
for it,
I've got it here. It says it's first of all, Per Polite Church says when someone runs for office, they only see the outside, but once in office, it can become a different ball game. Those in office can be against you and not wanting change. And then she said, it's no different from people wanting to become ministers for the money. Many are called, few are chosen. So
yeah. So this is where the challenge lies. When it comes to service, how do you
mm,
understand service? And that's why I said, what is at the heart of your proposal as you running for office? Nobody is telling you you can't run, and nobody is telling you
yeah,
you should run. But should you run, what is at the heart of your proposal?
yeah,
Mm,
And what is behind the ideas that you promote? Is it really the desire to serve and make a difference for God? Or
mm,
is it the desire to make a difference in your lifestyle and
mm,
your ability to to grow and develop in this
mm.
particular world in which we live? Which one? Are you trying to serve God first, or are you trying to
Yeah.
serve yourself first?
Mm.
Usually, this is what happens. Can you read for me Romans chapter 16, verse 18, please?
Yeah. And it says, such people are not serving Christ, our Lord. They are serving their own personal interests. By smooth talking and glowing words, they deceive innocent people.
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah, go
Pedro,
ahead.
it's interesting, right? Because the viewers are really on the same page as us today, and they are not. They are 90%, 99%, 99.9% of the time, but today especially, right? Here's a comment from Tracy Lowe. She goes, "Yes, all the money, yes, money, and all the privilege that goes with it." And then she goes on to say, "The world's agenda isn't the same as God's." And
Yeah.
when you were saying, what are you running for? What is your MO? What is the foundation to why you're running? Then what we've just read and what you're
This
going
is
to say now.
exactly this is
Yeah.
exactly what I was about to expound on.
So
When
thank you,
you run,
Tracy.
Mm.
sorry?
I'm saying thanks to Tracy and all the
Yeah,
other comments.
when you run for office,
Hmm.
what usually happens? What is the relationship between what you say and what um, the people hear?
Um,
What is generally the relationship?
it's usually what you say. If you want to win, what you say has to be what the people want to hear. It needs to be
Aha.
something that makes them happy, that makes them think that you're on their side.
And we can see, we just need to look at the biggest democracy in the world today, how it is struggling around this issue. We have a very, well, not in this country, but in that country, and I believe some of our viewers live or reside in that country, where on Tuesday there will be a very important election. what do they hear from the mouths of the people who are campaigning? You see, the relationship is very simple. And I just need to say what you want to hear, and it doesn't matter if it's a lie.
Mm.
It doesn't matter
Yeah.
if it's a lie. A lie because I know it's not true, or a lie because I know whatever I say, it's never going to happen. But because I know
Mm.
you want to hear that, so I will have to tell you, same mentality to what we heard from Absalom. Oh, yeah, you've got a strong case here. Yeah, I'm telling you, it's too bad you've got nobody to listen to you in government. But you know what? If I were in government, oh,
Mm.
your case would be resolved. I'm telling you. And
Mm-hmm.
you know what? Um, come with me. Come with me. Let's change that. Let's be a force that will drive the change.
Change,
Vote
yes.
for me. So the question we need to ask ourselves, when we run, if we run, whatever the office, are we going to tell the people, you know what? I'm going to run and I'm running, but I'm telling you up front, I'm going to do only what God tells me to do. You hear me? I'm
Yeah.
going to do only what. Have you said anything wrong by saying this?
No.
No,
No.
Have you said something God would be against by saying this?
No.
no,
But tell me,
No.
will you get elected?
No.
no. You get very few votes.
So,
Yeah.
what you're running, you're not running the race to lose it. You're running the race to win it. So, if you
Win.
want to win,
Mm.
you will have to find something that will make you acceptable in the eyes of these people. So, in the current political context, or if you like, in the current political sphere in the 21st century, how would that sit with people that you're going to run in order to defend God's interest? And if they vote for
Mm.
you, you will do only what God tells you to do. How will that
Mm.
sit with your audience?
Pedro, it's interesting you should say that because Ru- Ruti G mentioned quite early on, she says, we are to promote God and what he can do for them. So choose God. That should be our politics. It's
Mm.
a
So you
beautiful
see,
statement and it's a correct one.
I have seen parties in my country. They call themselves the Christian Party.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's all you hear about them is that they exist.
Oh dear.
All you hear about them is that they exist, and you only hear that they exist at the time of the election. You don't hear about them before, you don't hear about them after, because nobody votes for them. And let me tell you something. If you are going to run for office and you're going to tell people, I will do just what God tells me to do, let me tell you something. Not even in church will they vote for you.
Mm. Oh, Pedro, I've got a
Not even
comment.
in church. If you're going to
I've got a,
tell if you're going to tell church people that I'm going to do only what God tells me to do, they won't vote for you because
Yeah.
the whole um, essence of
mm,
that practice of running for political um, position
mm,
does not sit within the the matrix of doing what God wants you to do. It just doesn't. Even if your whole country was a Christian country, even if your whole country was one church of the
Mm,
same denomination,
mm.
you're not going to get elected on this. So
Mm.
Yeah.
you're free to run. The Bible is not going to stop you from running. Go ahead and run. Yeah.
Mm.
So can I read a few comments? Or Colleen, have you got any comments you want to read out Colleen, from
Yeah,
this?
there is. There's one in particular, Pedro, that we missed earlier on. And
Mm,
that comment says, if they are a Christian looking to hold the highest office, i.e., Prime Minister, what happens when Sunday law raises its head? So I think that's an important question, but I think it can relate to anything really that relates to like a Christian belief or a Christian understanding.
yeah. And I think also we've got a comment here, and it's say, which is quite interesting actually. Um, thi- this is why you need to learn to pick sense out of nonsense. And Tracy said to stand up for what is right often means to stand alone and to be disliked by fellow men or women. And Nicole says, Sabbath peace to all, great topic and insight. Christians should only run for office if they are led by God and can perform their duties to his glory. Power led by flesh will lead to corruption. Esther D says there is no relationship between the people other than words people want to hear and how it makes them feel, unless there has been history of how the person running behaves when in office. And Tracy Lowe said, Pedro, please stand up. That was after the comment you made. So
Shall I run for office?
you're a Christian, you'll never get elected.
All right. And I'm saying
So
not even in church will I be.
Pedro, no, I've got a final question. You're right. Well, that is a bold statement to make. Even in church, you will not be. But we'll come back to that.
On the
So,
basis of me saying, if I run for
yeah,
anything, saying that I'm going to do only what God tells me to do, I'm sure I won't be elected.
and I think that's a global thing. Actually, it's not just
It's a human
in
thing.
this. Yes, it's a human
Mm.
thing, right? So, my final question: are you saying that Christians cannot run for government office?
Yeah,
In in
that's a
in the
really
current political,
important question, Pedro. That's a really important question because in Christianity, there's usually two schools of thoughts on this. There's obviously those who believe you can and those that believe you can't. So the ones that say, yes, you can run for office typically say, well, if you're able to run for office and you are able to uphold Christian viewpoints, once you're in office, then you're able to steer and shape the direction of policies that are positive policies, and that you're able to somehow hold back, the evil and darkness because you have a feet at the table. You're able to kind of like when people are making decisions, you're at the table to navigate those decisions and influence those decisions. While those who say no, you shouldn't be in office will often state like it's a mixing of church and state, or that there's a lot of corruption in politics, and that as Christians we shouldn't align ourselves with things of this world. So I think it's important for us to get to the bottom to the bottom of this.
okay, and that's true. But to your question, no, I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying,
Okay.
God did not tell Absalom not to run. He let him run. God
Mm,
didn't say to Abimelech not to run. He let him run. God did not say to Solomon's brother, what was his name again? Joab or something like this. He didn't tell him not to run. He let him run. But check the
yeah.
stories. Check the
Mm,
stories. And if you want to bring that to our current political context, my question would be, as you're running, what would be your true agenda? And that's the personal question I would ask myself. What would be my true agenda beyond my political manifesto?
Mm.
What would be my true
Yeah.
agenda? As a Christian, I believe that
Um,
you live for Christ and you die for Christ, right? So Christ is first and foremost, and the Bible, and I think Christians would agree with me, promotes that you love people like you love yourself. But before that, you love God more than anybody else.
Mm.
Yeah. So how are you taking just this into consideration as you're running for whatever office, prime minister or just MP or whatever? How will you relate to God and to the people around you within your own party, because you will need to have a party, right? Even if it's just you in it.
Yeah.
But more importantly, how are you going to relate to those who are opposed to your camp?
mm,
That is in or within the actual political context of today. Will you act as, can you read a text for me? Philippians chapter 4, verse 8. Can you read that for me, please, as our closing text?
Colleen?
and now, dear brothers and sisters, one final thing. Fix your thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. Think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise.
Amen.
Okay. So that's a beautiful flower, and next to
It
it
is.
is a text. Look at the text. Look at it carefully. As you're running, if you can run and you can do it to the glory of God, all to the glory of God. And if you can do it because, as a Christian, you don't do things God has not asked you to do, you do things God has asked you to do. If you're running because God has asked you to run, then by all means, go ahead and do it. So I'm not saying
Mm.
as Christians you cannot run, but I know of Christians who have held high office in government one way or another. And when they come out of it, 99.99% of the time, they come and say, this is not a place for Christians.
Mm,
I'm talking
mm,
about people who run, okay? Let's not mix this up with people who haven't run for office and they find themselves in those places. That's not the same thing. We're talking
Mm.
about running for office. Their confession is, it's not suitable. It's
Mm.
not suitable for Christians to be in that lifestyle. So
And it's,
I'm
yeah.
saying, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, can we have the text again? Whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, things that are excellent and worthy of praise, let that be your thinking all the time as you are running for
mm,
office. Come and tell me how it works.
So,
mm,
So Pedro, basically, I'm looking to contrast that with Romans 16:18. I'm not sure if We've read that one.
Yeah, we
Because
did.
yeah, but so you've got those two. So I'm saying it's interesting how you've got that beautiful text in Philippians 4, and then you've got the one in Romans, which is so damning to anyone that goes into those spaces. And as you've said, they come out with a different mindset because their spirituality is compromised. And we've got a comment from Ruthie G, and it says their connection with God in the world we live will not allow them to stay in office, even if they get in. The higher you get, the darker the environment. Is it really worth my soul's salvation? And then one from Purple Light Touch, and says, that's right. You can compromise yourself. You have to turn a blind eye. Isn't that awful?
Mm.
Well, and that's what we read. Whatever is true, whatever is right, whatever is admirable, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, that's what you're supposed to feed on. We're talking
Yeah.
about the mind. And will that environment allow you to do this? I don't
No.
I don't know, but if you think it can, then by all means go and run for office. But it would seem to me challenging a place for you to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Any more further comments, Colleen, coming in?
Not comments, but I just really wanted to ask, there is a comment actually. It says, it would be interesting to see what Ben Carson would say if he would say running for office is not for Christian, as he took a position under a corrupt office. So
Well,
Mm.
that's asking about.
I actually heard him say after that whole episode, I actually heard him say that he is he doesn't trust politics, and
Wow.
he he is not into politics. I heard him say this. He might have changed his mind again. I don't know, but I
Mm,
heard him say this.
Yeah. And I think
mm,
it's beautiful that he actually came to the light because, as Ruti G said, the higher you go, the darker the world you're in because
yeah.
now you're actually in the viper's den, and you're seeing, wow, it may look glistening on the outside like the temple shining, but inside it's full of dead men's bones. And that's why this
Mm,
book here, please look back at it, because the text came from here showing that there was corruption even in the Bible. And to get away from that, as the viewers beautifully stated, you have to be under the will of God. You may not be the flavor of the month, but Christ went to the cross, and he wasn't the flavor of the month, but he died for the sins of the whole world. And the Bible shows us how to really be politically savvy, but we can only do so under God. So, viewers, I want to thank you so much for joining us. And please like, share, and subscribe to this video, and give us a thumbs up because it tells other people that we are doing something right. And we're back again for another session on, is the Bible for or against politics? Because we haven't exhausted it yet, because it goes much deeper than this. We're just giving the foundations. But thank you so much. God bless. Bye bye.